So what if I told you there was better results, you could get better results for your child with dyslexia? I'm assuming that's why you're here, with a multi-pronged approach, to dyslexia. Instead of just the dyslexia tutor, it's kind of like having a job to do and you're just using the screwdriver. You don't have any other tools. You're just plugging away at something you have to cut and you're using the screwdriver. It doesn't work very well. So I want to broaden our discussion here and help you understand a little bit more about the different aspects of dyslexia. Today, we're going to specifically talk about phonics and all the ramifications of phonics. So I know that you are probably desperate for help for your child or have been in the past. And I know others are. I know I was when I was having trouble finding help for my daughter. So I would love it if you would just click the buttons, like and subscribe and share this so that other people can find out about it. So in the live that I just did earlier today, I talked about Samuel Orton and all the different things that he found. He's the one that found dyslexia. He said these people have many of these symptoms. They don't have all of them, but they all have phonetic awareness issues for sure. But some of them have dominance issues, eye issues, balance issues, coordination issues. And I've done a separate talk on each one of those. So if you haven't heard those, go back and check those out. I think you'll find it very fascinating that there's many things, so if you're going to build a house, you need more than a screwdriver to build it. And if you're going to take care of dyslexic symptoms, you need a multi-pronged approach. Now, when we're talking about phonics, that is an auditory approach to learning to read. You have to hear the sound, you have to hear each sound and put each sound together to have a word. But what if you have tonal processing issues? Some children have that, what we call tonal processing. The ear hears, the brain is not interpreting that correctly. And so if they hear a different sound than what they're supposed to create, that's going to throw their word recognition off or their reading ability off. I had one client say, I knew there was a problem when my daughter said, what do you mean a purple cow's on the roof? And the whole family's just kind of looking around like, what are you talking about? The child had literally heard that they said purple cow was on the roof. And she was insistent. They said, we didn't say that. We didn't say a purple cow was on the roof. You did. You just said a purple cow was on the roof. What do you mean? Well, can you imagine the struggle to learn phonetic sounds and use them appropriately if you hear strange things like that? Well, that's what some children have. Some children have hypersensitivity to sound. They hold their ears when they're in loud environments. They don't like crowds. If there's a lot of people, they tend to go off to their room by themselves because it's a distortion. Hypersensitivity distorts the sound that's coming into their auditory system. And it can also be like a cocktail effect in their hearing. In other words, the teacher is louder and she's coming from the front, but there's all these other noises, siblings or classmates or other noises that to them seem just as loud as the teacher. So you can imagine how distorted that is if they have that kind of input to their auditory system. Now, I talk a lot as a neurodevelopmentalist about input, input, input. That means information coming into the brain before we ask for output. So that's why we want to check on all these uh, different things. I'm Dr. Jan Bedell, and I've been in education for more than 40 years. And when I first started teaching, I taught kindergarten. That was my first exposure to phonics. I'd been all the way through school, all the way through college, and never heard of phonics. So even though phonics is a great way to teach reading, I believe that, don't get me wrong, but there's other ways to teach reading. And my generation, we weren't exposed to phonics, but when I taught kindergarten, I had to learn it because they wanted them to know phonics. Now, what I didn't know back then is the importance of auditory processing in this whole picture. Now, what is auditory processing? That is your auditory short-term memory, what you can hold together and bring right back out. So auditory short-term memory. Hopefully you can see the connection between phonics, which is an auditory approach to learning. And what I mean by that, you have to know the sound, you have to get this sound, this sound, this sound, and oftentimes the rule to be able to get that word out. So if there is a lot of challenges with holding information together, they're going to have a terrible time with phonics. Now, I have never seen anything in all my years of education as impactful to a person's function as auditory processing. Not only is it important for those children with dyslexia, but it's important for all of our children, and it has diminished over time tremendously. So, how do you develop auditory processing? Well, you listen a lot. Now, what are the children doing these days? They're doing visual, visual, visual. They're not doing a lot of listening. We're not sitting down typically for 3 meals a day and talking, unless maybe you're homeschooling. But then there's lots of distractions as well. We're typically on the go all the time, run through the drive-through, get the dinner, pass it over the back seat on the way to soccer while they're watching a movie. So this has really been something cultural that has happened that has diminished this skill. And that's why so many children are having trouble with phonics. Now, to really do well with phonics, you need at least a 5-digit span. And what I mean by that is digits are 0 to 9, and they're in random order. You give them to the child with a second in between. So it's going to sound like this: 4, 9, 3, 6. Then they give that back to you. You continue to go up with that test to see where they are, and they really need a strong 5 working on 6, or phonics is a real challenge for them. The other things that are a real challenge that make this hard for our educational system is it makes it hard to follow directions. You have to hold those pieces. It makes it hard to stay on task because you're distracted easily because you can only hold a little bit. It affects comprehension, their ability to hold information that they've read or that they've heard. And it's a challenge for seeing the big picture of things, like making good decisions because you can see, oh, all these ramifications and all these choices. So the reason that I harp on this is because it does affect all these areas. It globally affects the child negatively. So I want to encourage you to go to our website, and we'll put a link in the description of the page you can go to for auditory processing. And there you'll find a link to test kits. They're free test kits, and it will teach you not only the auditory, but the visual to find out where your visual processing is as well. These kits are for infants, toddlers and up. And then you can also test nonverbal with those, what we call tiny tot test kits. And the others are for anyone 4 and older. And find out where they are. And in the meantime, so what we do is when we have a child with dyslexia come in, we don't label any children, but they do come in with that label. When that happens, we give them that test and, among other things, find out where they are neurodevelopmentally and give the parents a program to do at home that changes the brain in all those areas. So if you want more information about that, you can do a free consult, or you can go to our website, brainsprints.com, and look at the things that we have to offer there. One thing that I'm going to give you information about, and that is a different technique that we use while we work on their processing to bring that back up so that they can handle phonics. Because again, I love phonics. Phonics is a great way to teach reading if their processing is high enough. If not, they're just discouraged and they don't think they can read. They come in oftentimes to my office and say, well, I'm dyslexic, I can't read. So that's not the truth, and those symptoms can be taken care of. I'm going to put on the screen here something that proves that. If you look at this little paragraph, I want you to read it for me, and then tell me if you're reading it phonetically or if you're reading it by sight. Okay, now isn't that amazing? We thought spelling was important, right? Now, why is our brain able to do that? If the letters of the word, if the first and last one are in the right place and they're not too mixed up, we can always know what that means. Even though those letters are all mixed up, we know what it says. And that's because we're sight readers. So what we do is teach them sight words while we're working on their processing. Then they have a good sight word vocabulary and can add phonics back in on top of that. And then they have the best of both worlds. They can just whiz through and they can, with their sight words, and they can also figure out words that they don't know with a phonetic approach. So you could look at the 1,000 words that's on our store, on our website. This is the 1,000 most commonly read words in the order that they're usually read. And so if they get through those words and we give you a specific way to teach those to them with input, 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 those directions are included. And if they can get through those, they've got like 60+% of 6th grade reading. So it really gives them a boost in their confidence when they can just read those words. So I encourage you to check that out. Now, I've asked you to think differently over many videos that I've done. If this is your first one, I encourage you to go to some more of the ones on this channel and subscribe and hear a different approach for our children. I just want to read you a quick testimony. This is from Marie from Kern, Texas. A few years ago, she was evaluated by one of our Brain Sprints evaluators. And she wrote in, I'm extremely happy to report that my son has been reversal free now for several months, and that his spelling has improved drastically. And she writes, he won't test as dyslexic anymore. Thank you, Ruth Young. So what does she mean by that? I thought if you were dyslexic, you're always dyslexic. Well, that's not what our experience has been. We see children with these symptoms of dyslexia. We teach the parents what to do to stimulate the brain in all those areas that could be affecting those symptoms that, because dyslexia is a symptomatic label. If they have a certain number of those symptoms, then they label them that. So that's what we've seen over the years is the symptoms either diminish or greatly or are totally eliminated, which makes it really exciting. Well, Marie goes on to say uh, her son also had a few sensory issues, which were addressed by this program. He will now eat onions. He was always refusing them before. His coordination has also improved dramatically, even though he is in the middle of his teen growth spurt. Improved enough to milk a cow, which she says is a very coordinated activity in case you never tried it. I can vouch for that. We have a farm and it does take some good coordination to milk those cows. Anyway, I just wanted to give you hope and that your child has another avenue than just phonics to help with those symptoms, to help them be the most they can be. Thanks for listening. See you next time.